It's gonna be a little bit of a different format. We're gonna be pre-recording these games and casting them and then uploading them to YouTube. Because I'm, you know, your classic amateur streamer and forgets to press buttons. So ruin the live cast. So you have to settle for a pre-recorded cast. The pre-recordings in these TGA files means that the map is not going to display 100% accurately, but as the game plays on, you will be able to see how the map plays out. And most people watching this are probably pretty familiar with the map, and you'll understand what the layout looks like without the whole TGA file. With that said, maybe I will, maybe I won't. Not sure yet whether or not I try and edit it and post to make it a little bit easier to read the map, any map. But with that said, we're just gonna try and get into it. Ignore the fact that it says game 2 and game 3. This is actually game 1 and game 2. I won't go into details why that is the case, but it just is that. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, now that we're into the game,
An opponent has been defeated.
we're gonna have a classic, we're gonna have a little bit of interesting layout this time. We're gonna have left versus right, red versus blue. It's gonna be representing the blue team, we're gonna have B in the bottom left, and on top left we're gonna have Warbringer as hierarchy. This is definitely Warbringer's off-race faction, not his best faction, but not his worst either. B, a novice main, and a novice novice, so to speak. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how she plays this game. And representing the red team, team 2, on the right side here we have Overlord in the dark red, playing hierarchy. I would argue, I think hierarchy is probably Overlord's main. You know, he juggles, but he's a pretty well-rounder. But I'd say hierarchy is probably one of his favorites for sure. And in the bottom right we have Darkie playing as Novice. Now Novice is definitely one of Darkie's off factions, but not his worst faction. In fact, I want to say Darkie is one of those rare kind of players. He's a bit of a well-rounder, jack of all trades, master of none, but certainly versatile. Whereas Overlord definitely plays very strong with hierarchy, and maybe his second faction being Novice, and maybe his weakest faction being with that said, we're gonna look over here on Overlord. Now we do see Monolith Snipe trying to come down from Overlord here onto Warbringer. Misses doesn't quite get the glyph snipe though. Lucky for Warbringer. A little bit unlucky there for Overlord. Not too bad though. Pretty standard opening here from Warbringer. 4 Reaper drones. 4 Reaper drones into 2 glyph carvers, and then you send them out. I expect to see a walker on the 5th here, but we'll see what he does. Looking on the opposite side here, we have Overlord opening up very similar. 2 glyph carvers into 1, 2, 3, 4 Reaper drones. Right? Yep, 4 Reaper drones. Pretty standard as well. But now we're going to see the difference in players here. Immediately, we're going to see Overlord opt to go for a 5th Reaper drone instead of a walker on his 5th. And he might even go for 6th Reaper drone here, because this is a bit of an eco play. You're effectively stalling your walker in an attempt to get a stronger eco into the mid game. The risk to this is that if you do not successfully hide the walker glyph, it could easily get sniped, because around this time is when Mirror Belt's gonna be out, Figment's gonna be out, and you run the risk of getting that walker sniped. That's why you tend to see it come down as your 5th. So we do see the 5th walker coming down, 5th structure coming down as a walker from Warbringer here. Pretty standard stuff. That is the safe way to play it, is how you do it. And he's going to build it right next to this pond here in the middle, where he's going to try and post up his walker. This is a very good place to have production walkers, since they can't be attacked from the coast too effectively unless they get air units in there. With that said, B doing a good job expanding into her natural resources here on the top and then the right left here. This is perfect. This is exactly what you want to see from Nova. It's a nice even spread. And then further into the game, I'd like to see, you know, flow networks going further east and then maybe more to the north here. But we'll see what he does. This monolith just harassing, just scouting. It's just trying to look for glyphs. It's just trying to find things. Ooh, the assembly walker. Oh, the assembly walker almost gets sniped from Darkie here. That could have been an absolutely huge play for the red team here. Unfortunately, he does not focus fire that glyph quick enough, and it does manage to get summoned. Now, he does lose an arm for this, but that's actually fine. I think a better target here, as wild as it might seem, might have been to take out one of these cost optimizers if you know this is just going to be a production walker, because in the long run, this walker doesn't care if it loses an arm, it's just going to camp in the middle of this pond. But if you take out a cost optimizer and a leg so it can't rebuild, that's going to cost Warbringer a significant amount of money going forward. You know, that's an extra 20% on each of these units going forward. Or is it 20%? I'm not sure what the cost is. I think it's... Can I find out? I can't find out. But I think it's 20%. So good, almost a good snipe, almost a good play from Darkie there. Not quite though, but this is the good case of why you want to have a glyph walker down on your 5th structure, because if that glyph had been delayed anymore, then maybe it could have been destroyed, right? And then you wouldn't have a walker right now, and you'd be in a little pain. However, looking at Overlord here on the opposite side, B has been very passive with her mirror belt, so a lot less aggressive, not as much scouting, and the side result is that there is no punishment to Overlord's Reaper drones, right? He doesn't get punished for going 5th and 6th Reaper drone, and even 7th Reaper drone. I'm sure he's got 7 now, right? 2, 4. Yep, that's the 7th one right there, because we have 6 down here, right? 6 and 7. Yeah, that's it. So Overlord has set himself up for a pure eco here. And because of that, he's able to go 2 walkers right away, whereas Warbringer is left with 1 walker and some units here. Significantly more aggressive than what Overlord is doing, but we'll see if it pays off. The mirror bell is down here, escorting both a couple anti-mirror tanks as well as the base tanks. We do see the mirror bell shooting a missile barrage here from Darkie. Typically, when you see a missile barrage like that, it can be very risky. Now, B's mirror bell, bad placement here, because she's sitting in front of that redirection turret trying to target the enemy mirror bell, but that redirection turret will redirect fire even if it's not directly targeting the redirection turret. Now the mirror bells are going in for a little skirmish here. B's panicked and decided to just run away, does not challenge this mirror bell at all. She sees 50% HP and she says, I'm out of there. Darkie, on the other hand, very aggressive, no fear whatsoever. This could be either brave or dumb, we don't know. But he goes in, he chases down a few more units, does a little bit more chip damage, gets down to 15% HP, absolutely skirting the battle here. The mirror ball from B chases, but does not take the snipe shot. A snipe shot would absolutely execute this mirror ball. It's very difficult for the snipers to get away from the snipe shot. Unfortunately, this mirror ball does get cornered by a walker, surprise walker, from Overlord, and then it gets pinched by the amplifier from Darkie and gets away with just 4% HP. I swear she had 0% HP at one point. That is absolutely insane. Wow. Very risky. Again, call it smart, call it dumb, but at the end of the day, if you pull fire like that and if you pull damage like that away from the other units, the more fragile units like amplifiers and anti-mirror tanks, that's damage that you can recover over time. Damage to these and, you know, protects these guys. The high risk Kyrie worked. Good job to both players. Definitely plenty of opportunities for either side to snipe out the other mirror bell, but they're just so focused on protecting their mirror bells. Neither one was looking for that execution. We do see the base tank coming in from Overlord, or from Warbringer here, I mean, and is absolutely overwhelming the Synovia's base. And that skirmish between the 2 mirror bells allowed for this to happen, right? Because that mirror bell wasn't taking her shots against this walker, which means it's still alive. And because that walker is still alive and it has the production pods, these base tanks are able to just be pumped out in mass and overwhelm the space. So great job to B for the distraction and support, and good job to Warbringer for leading the charge there. And this is a classic case of teamwork, right? Now, this walker did come in from Overlord and almost killed that mirror bell, but it was more of an accident than a planned strategy. And the situation that's kind of unlaid itself right now, or unrolled itself right now, is a classic example of teamwork, right? So I'd say if Overlord was a bit out of position with these walkers, he should have definitely built the glyph carver a lot, moved the glyph carver a lot closer and built the glyph closer to his teammate. It's because if one of these assembly walkers was fully kitted, was in this base, it would have been very different, but unfortunately it wasn't. So now Darkie is forced to become nomadic. and move his base. And if there's one faction in this game that is the least effective at being nomadic, it is Novus. Novus loves to have that infrastructure. You know, Hierarchy can afford to be nomadic because of their walkers, because of their rival site. It's the only, virtually one of the two only physical structures from Hierarchy. And Masari in the opposite spectrum, they can build anywhere. They don't require power. They have virtually infinite resources, so they really don't care if they have multiple outposts or command center or not. They just don't. With that said, so Nova's being on the backfield like this, very bad. And the Mirabelle does get chased down by the phase tanks as well here. It gets down to 13% HP, 12%. Good micro around the command center, even though it's not even built. It's good micro though. She does manage to get away back in behind the Science Walker. This is gonna keep her alive here. A Mirabelle with good micro skills will never die here, even at 10, 6, 5% HP, just because of all these structures, the damage from the turrets and the saucers. It's not gonna happen. But she does go down. She actually does get sniped. That is very unfortunate. I imagine Darkie thought she was safe enough here in the front instead of in the back, and just assumed the base tanks weren't gonna chase and pursue, but they did. They absolutely did, and she does go down. It's very unfortunate to see. That I think that just puts another nail in the coffin for red team here, right? The 1 foot in the grave, one hand out of the coffin. They're just hanging on for dear life here, but it's looking pretty tough here. An interesting play as well we're seeing here is we're seeing Overlord opt to go for the rival site on Warbringer, which honestly I think is one of the weaker points to attack for sure, because we mentioned before, just mentioned how Hierarchy is very nomadic, so sorry, they don't really care if they lose their stronghold, right? But Novus absolutely does. Their infrastructure is very fragile, and without Viral 3 and Cascade, it's very easy to stomp through Novus infrastructure bases. So seeing these walkers go, to the northwest instead of southwest is definitely, I would say, a definite mistake, because these walkers, imagine this walker instead of right here looking dead at this rival site, it could be looking, maybe at this at these vehicles in the science center, maybe the EMP destabilizer. But this is also a very difficult position to be in for red, and I imagine that maybe Overlord forgot which spawn that Novus was on. But the thing about Novus is, and some of you may or may not know, is that you can hear Novus through the fog of war. You can hear their recycling centers. They're very noisy, so Novus can't hide. Not to mention, in the pre-game lobby, players do pick their spawns, since this is a caster's map with 2 extra seats. So, everyone does know where everyone is. So really, this walker should not be here. And this walker is just gonna, try and take out some, I guess, field inverters. But looking back at the base here, we do have the Kamal hanging out. We do see the EMP destabilizer going down. No black hole yet, but oh, there it is. There's the black hole channel. B playing very good. This is a very strong Novus. Strong Novus opening, well, strong Novus transition. And it's even, if this game went long enough, we do even have the Novus preparing for the late game. Now, I mentioned that a lot. I mentioned Novus a lot here because in these matchups with Hierarchy, the off race becomes the anchor, right? So whether it's Novus or Masari, that faction, that secondary faction outside of Hierarchy becomes an anchor, because obviously Hierarchy, their biggest strength is their walkers, and these are effectively super-sized battering rams. And although they can break into your base, there's no guarantee that they'll live long enough to clean it up. And if you can't clean up a base, then it's very easy for some of the other factions to come back into the game, particularly Novus and Sarge. So yeah, there's Darkie officially throwing in the towel, calling it GG, and we do see Kamal going down from Overlord. So I imagine without his hero and only a science walker, I mean, we do have an assembly walker down here on the west side, but with only that, I can't imagine he's a player. I can't imagine Overlord staying in the game much longer. But yeah, it's a very interesting matchup. playing 2v2s. I think 2v2s is probably the, without community patches being able to be implemented into games live. I think 2v2s is the best place that we're going to see balance, because theoretically there's an answer to everything with a teammate and with all factions, because these factions, funny enough, do complement each other very well. You just have to play to their strengths and play as a team, which is always a new element to add. It's always fun. But yeah, the Novus absolutely becomes an anchor, and so does Masari. I think probably, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see. I think in these tournament matches, it'd be interesting to see a double hierarchy team. But I do think double hierarchy might be the weakest faction. Because the other factions, every faction has answers to walkers. Even hierarchy has an answer to walkers. So if you go double hierarchy, you're doubling down on your strength, but also your weaknesses. And I think doubling down on your weaknesses is more detrimental than your strength, because, you know, all factions have an answer. And if they have an answer, then there's no guarantee you'll be able to play to your strengths, right? Because weaknesses hit first, typically hit first, then intercept work. Now, do you see Overlord going down with a fight? And the reason why these players are sticking into the game for as long as they are, even though a few of the veteran RTS players are looking at this game and they might be thinking, oh, this is dead to right, this is game over. They should have just conceded and GG and moved on. But what you might not understand is, in this tournament, in this series, in this format, this is just a best of one. And we did that because at the time, there was a lot of signups. However, now we have had a few people drop out, just due to time restraints, which is okay. It's normal to be expected. But yeah, now interesting development here. Overlord has gone for mass saucers with what little he has. He managed to actually snipe the rival site from Warbringer, and he managed to take out a glyph carver from Warbringer. So with that said, there's actually a glimmer of hope in this game for Overlord. I wouldn't count them dead out of the game yet. Now he is going to target a black hole generator here. I don't know how valuable that is in this particular matchup right now, because the goal should be, I mean, this will be a nice kill if he can get it. It does reset B super weapon. Now, this is very important right now. These saucers need to find and kill, oh no, need to find and kill these Reaper drones, because that's the final piece. That's the final piece to removing Warbringer from this match. And if he can turn this match into a 1v1 instead of a 2v1, suddenly red team's still back in the game. Or suddenly red team's put back in the game. Unfortunately, Overlord does not scout the Reaper drones. He does seem to be looking around the map, but he's looking with the whole squad of saucers instead of splitting them up into segments. You really should be splitting these guys up into, just spreading them out, sending them to the corners of the earth and hunting down these Reaper drones, right? As long as those Reaper drones exist and this walker exists, and Overlord knows this walker exists, he's seen it, then he knows that Warbringer is still in the game. And could still theoretically provide assistance to his teammate by just producing saucers of his own or base tanks. And as long as he's got Reaper drones to collect that income, he's still in the game. And again, we're seeing the scout from Overlord. He knows he needs to find these Reaper drones. Unfortunately, he's not being very efficient with his time and with his units, and not scouting the map quick enough with these saucers. And the quickest way to search for these saucers is to just select them individually, select them in groups of 2, and just fan them out across the map. You would eventually find those Reaper drones very quickly. Now the assault does come in from Novus here. This is going to apply a lot of pressure to hierarchy, and he's going to start running out of time. Interesting strategy here. Do you see the mass drivers coming down on the walker here? Some of the more conservative players would argue that there's no need for this walker to be anywhere near the front lines. It should just be hanging out inside of Novus's base, or maybe even hanging out next to the Reaper drones, and just let the Reaper drones provide the resources and let the assembly walker continuously pump units. However, Warbringer, I mean, I have respect for it. He does not, and he stays true to his name. He does not hold back. He's a bringer of war. and he takes this single structure that he has left, a single producing structure, and he sends it straight into the hierarchy base. He says, if my teammate's ready for battle, so am I. And he gets right in there. So, massive respect to that. He definitely could have played this much safer, but he realizes it's a 2v1. And I guess he has so much confidence in his teammate, even winning this game in a 1v1, with the advantage that she has, that Warbringer doesn't even need to be here. With that said, it'd be interesting to see if Overlord manages to take down at least one player with them before he goes down. We'll see what happens. He is dramatically back into the corner here. He has no Reaper drones, I don't think. Yeah, all of his Reaper drones have been sniped. We see across the minimap, all the Reaper drones have been sniped. Overlord's been pushed into the corner. And it's only a matter of time now before he's completely wiped out here. So there was a moment, there was a glimmer of hope in this matchup where it could have turned into a 1v1. Maybe Overlord would still be in the game. But it was a difficult, it's not easy. Like, as a caster and as a spectator, we can see the sauces here, we can see the Reaper drones there, and it's like, oh, the distance is so close, you know, how could he miss that? And we can always speak in hindsight and 20/20 vision, but at the end of the day, it's just a slim chance whether or not those saucers can spot these Reaper drones. And maybe in another universe he does that, and he does pull off the 2v1, convert it to a 1v1, and then pulls it through and pulls off the W. But unfortunately, this is not that universe. And Overlord does not scout the Reaper drones, and he does not convert it to a 1v1. And it does go to the blue team. It does go to Warbringer and B. Congratulations to Team 1. And good job. GG. 18-minute game. 19-minute game? Basically 19 minutes. Not bad. Not bad at all. Good job to both players. Both teams, I mean.